First contact in the frost. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the RSS Horizon, watching crystalline snowflakes drift past the reinforced windows. Europa 9, a frozen world at the edge of human space, stretched endlessly below them. The planet's surface sparkled like diamond dust under the light of its distant sun, but it wasn't the beauty that had brought humanity's finest minds to this desolate corner of space. It was the signal, a perfect mathematical sequence, repeating endlessly from somewhere beneath the ice. Final checks complete, Doctor. Commander James Rodriguez approached, his footsteps echoing in the empty observation deck. The drilling team is ready to begin descent. Sarah nodded, her breath fogging the glass. After 15 years of searching for alien intelligence, humanity had finally found something. But not in the way anyone had expected. No radio signals from distant stars, no light-speed messages encoded in gamma rays. Instead, they'd found this, a steady pulse of gravitational waves emanating from within a frozen world. The descent team consisted of 12 specialists, 3 xenorchaeologists, including Sarah, 4 engineers, 2 physicists, and 3 military personnel. They'd trained for months in Antarctica, preparing for this moment. But Antarctica was a tropical paradise compared to Europa 9, where temperatures plunged to negative 300 degrees Celsius in the shade. The drilling platform, a massive construct of reinforced titanium and carbon composites, had already carved a spiral tunnel through 20 kilometers of ice. Initial scans showed a massive cavity below, protected from the crushing pressure by some unknown force field that defied the laws of physics as humanity understood them. "We're picking up some unusual readings," Dr. Yuki Tanaka, their lead physicist, announced over the comm system. "The signal's getting stronger. Whatever's down there, it's active. And it's changing." Sarah felt her heart race. Changing how? "The mathematical sequence is evolving. It's responding to our presence." Commander Rodriguez frowned. "Could it be a defense system?" "If it is," Sarah replied, "it's unlike anything we've ever seen. The energy signatures don't match any known weapons system. It's more like a beacon." The descent began an hour later. Their expedition vehicle, nicknamed Snowflake for its hexagonal design, carried them down the spiral tunnel. Massive heating elements kept the ice from refreezing behind them, while forward scanners probed for dangerous pressure pockets or hidden crevices. 5 hours into their descent, they hit something solid. "Metal," engineer Carlos Patel announced, his voice filled with wonder. "Some kind of alien alloy. And it's warm." Before them stood a massive arch, easily 50 meters high, covered in flowing scripts that seemed to shift and change as they watched. The metal surface gleamed with an inner light, defying the darkness that should have existed this deep beneath the ice. "Look at this," Sarah breathed, approaching the surface. "These aren't just decorative patterns. They're mathematical formulas, engineering principles. This is knowledge, encoded into the very structure." As they studied the arch, a new signal pulsed through their instruments. The alien scripts began to glow brighter, and a deep humming filled the chamber. The arch was activating. "Everyone back," Commander Rodriguez ordered, but Sarah remained transfixed. The mathematical patterns were shifting faster now, forming new configurations, new meanings. "It's not just a door," she whispered. "It's a test." Before anyone could respond, a bright light erupted from the arch's center. When it faded, they found themselves facing a holographic projection of what appeared to be a star map, but unlike any they'd ever seen. It showed connections between systems that shouldn't have been possible, paths through space that violated everything they knew about physics. "This is incredible," Dr. Tanaka muttered, furiously taking readings. "These patterns suggest the existence of dimensional shortcuts, ways to traverse space that we never." His words were cut short by a new sound, a deep, resonating tone that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The star map flickered and changed, showing a sequence of images, other alien species, dozens of them, arriving at similar arches on different worlds. Some succeeded in passing through. Others failed. It's a history, Sarah realized. No, it's an invitation. As if responding to her words, the arch surface rippled like liquid metal. The scripts rearranged themselves into a new pattern, and for the first time, they formed words in recognizable human languages. "Prove yourselves worthy," Commander Rodriguez read aloud. What the hell does that mean? Before anyone could speculate, their instruments detected something new. Ships, massive ones, entering orbit around Europa 9. Ships that hadn't been there moments before, that seemed to have appeared from nowhere. They weren't alone anymore, and humanity's first real test was about to begin. The awakening below. The alien ships descended through Europa 9's atmosphere with impossible grace, their hulls shimmering with colors that shouldn't exist in normal space. Dr. Sarah Chen watched through Snowflake's external cameras as 3 vessels, each larger than Earth's biggest battleships, took position above the drilling site. Multiple attempts at communication. Lieutenant Maria Santos reported from her station. They're broadcasting in over 2,000 different frequencies and formats. Commander Rodriguez kept his voice steady. "Any we can understand." "No, sir, but—" Maria's eyes widened. "The arch is responding to them." The mathematical patterns on the ancient structure's surface began flowing like mercury, forming new configurations. The holographic star map disappeared, replaced by a series of rapid-fire images showing technological achievements of various species. Most were so advanced they seemed like magic. Their credentials, Sarah realized. The new arrivals are showing their technological capabilities. A harsh, metallic voice filled their communication system. "Primitive species detected at testing site Alpha 9. Evacuation recommended. Your presence here is premature." Dr. Tanaka bristled at the dismissal. "Premature. We decoded the signal. We made it here on our own. Through crude mechanical drilling." Another alien voice responded, this one somehow managing to sound both musical and condescending. "While we traverse dimensional gates, the disparity is significant." Sarah stepped forward. "The arch invited us. The same as you." "A statistical anomaly," the first voice declared. "Your species still burns fossil fuels on your home world. You wage wars over primitive resources. You have not yet achieved unified planetary governance. You are not ready." Before anyone could respond, the arch surface rippled again. New patterns emerge, forming complex equations that seemed to rotate through multiple dimensions. The alien ship's external lights flickered in response. "Interesting," the musical voice said. "The testing ground acknowledges their presence. Protocol demands we allow their attempt." Commander Rodriguez straightened his uniform. "We're not leaving. Whatever tests you faced, we have the right to face them too." "Then you will fail," a third alien voice declared, this one deep and resonating. "And your failure will be documented as a warning to other primitive species who reach beyond their capabilities." The arch surface suddenly liquefied completely, forming a mirror-smooth portal that hummed with power. Similar doorways appeared near each alien ship, their surfaces rippling with different colors. "The first trial begins," the metallic voice announced. "May wisdom guide the worthy." Sarah studied the portal before them. Unlike the aliens' doorways, which shimmered with complex energy patterns, theirs seemed simpler, almost crude. She realized with a start that the arch was adapting to each species' technological level. "It's calibrating," she whispered to Commander Rodriguez. "The aliens might have more advanced technology, but they'll face proportionally harder challenges." Multiple energy signatures detected, Carlos reported from his engineering station. "The alien ships are deploying some kind of probes?" "No, more like mobile laboratories." Through their external cameras, they watched as sleek, automated units descended from each ship. They moved with fluid precision, their surfaces covered in sensors and analytical equipment far beyond human understanding. But Sarah noticed something else. While the alien machines were undeniably more advanced, they all followed rigid, predetermined protocols. Their movements were perfect, programmed, predictable. "They're too perfect," she muttered. "Too specialized." "What are you thinking?" Commander Rodriguez asked. "The aliens have a solution for everything," Sarah explained. "But that might be their weakness. They're so advanced, they've forgotten how to improvise, how to think outside their technological frameworks." As if confirming her theory, the arch surface rippled again. New mathematical patterns appeared, but these were different. They weren't just equations. They were puzzles. Problems that required lateral thinking, not just computational power. The alien probes froze, their sensors scanning the patterns repeatedly. Their perfect efficiency suddenly seemed more like rigid limitation. "They're stuck in their ways," Dr. Tanaka realized, catching Sarah's train of thought. "All that advanced technology, it's made them inflexible." Commander Rodriguez smiled for the first time since the alien ships arrived. "Then maybe being primitive isn't such a disadvantage after all." Sarah approached the arch, studying the puzzles with growing excitement. The patterns weren't just mathematical. They contained elements of art, music, even poetry. They required understanding beyond pure logic. "We need to think differently," she announced to her team. "The aliens see this as a technical challenge, but it's more than that. It's a test of creativity, of adaptability." The musical alien voice cut through their discussion. "Your primitive equipment cannot possibly decode these patterns. Accept your limitations." Sarah ignored them, her mind racing. The patterns seemed familiar somehow. They reminded her of something she'd seen in ancient human cultures, the way mathematics and art had once been intertwined, before the age of pure science had separated them. "Carlos," she called to the engineer, "can you modify our scanning equipment? Not to analyze the patterns, but to play them. Play them. Like music, these aren't just equations, they're harmonies." While the alien probes continued their methodical analysis, the human team worked to reconfigure their primitive equipment. They weren't trying to solve the patterns, they were trying to understand them in a fundamentally different way. The arch surface pulsed with approval as their first attempts at translation filled the chamber. The mathematical patterns weren't meant to be solved. They were meant to be experienced, interpreted, felt. "Impossible," the deep alien voice rumbled. "They cannot." But the arch was already responding. The patterns before the human team shifted, aligned, and opened into a new configuration. They had passed the first test. The alien observers fell silent, their perfect machines suddenly seeming less impressive. Perhaps they realized there was more to worthiness than technological advancement. And humanity's trial was just beginning. Trial of the ancients. The chamber beyond the arch defied explanation. It was vast, impossibly vast, stretching far beyond what should have been possible within Europa 9's ice shell. The walls seemed to be made of living light, shifting and flowing like auroras. But it was what floated in the center that held everyone's attention. A massive crystalline structure, rotating slowly in midair, its facets reflecting images from countless worlds and times. And within it, something was awakening. "Welcome, seekers," a new voice echoed through the chamber, neither mechanical like the first aliens nor musical like the seconds. It was ancient, carrying the weight of eons. "I am the curator, guardian of the legacy." The alien observers' probes immediately began scanning the crystal structure, their sensors working at maximum capacity. But Sarah noticed something odd about their behavior. They seemed to be following predetermined protocols, as if they'd encountered similar situations before. "You have witnessed this before," she realized, addressing the alien ships above. "Your species have found other curator sites. 17 across known space," the musical voice confirmed, a note of pride evident. "We have successfully accessed 11. The curator's voice held a hint of amusement. "And yet understanding still eludes you. Perhaps these newcomers will see what you could not." The crystalline structure's rotation slowed, and one of its faces turned toward the human team. Within its depths, images began to form, cities that dwarfed solar systems, machines that manipulated the fabric of reality, achievements that made even the advanced alien observers seem primitive in comparison. The precursors, Dr. Tanaka whispered in awe. We're seeing the precursor civilization. A fraction of what they were, the curator corrected. This facility is but one of many they left behind, each testing different aspects of potential inheritor species. Commander Rodriguez stepped forward. Testing for what? Worthiness. The deep alien voice rumbled from above. Worthiness to receive their legacy, their power. Sarah studied the images flowing through the crystal. Something wasn't right. Among the displays of incredible technological achievement, she noticed other images, smaller, seemingly insignificant moments. A child learning to walk, a flower growing through concrete, a primitive species taking its first steps into space. You're wrong, she said suddenly, causing the alien observers to fall silent. This isn't about power at all, is it, curator? The ancient intelligence seemed to pulse with approval. Continue. These images, they're not showing the precursors' greatest achievements. They're showing their journey, their growth. Sarah moved closer to the crystal. This isn't a test of worthiness to receive power. It's a test of understanding why power alone isn't enough. The chamber hummed with energy as Sarah's words echoed through it. The alien probe's scanning patterns became erratic, as if their programming couldn't process this new perspective. Impossible, the metallic voice declared. The precursors were the most advanced civilization in known history. Their power was absolute. And yet they're gone. Commander Rodriguez added, catching Sarah's insight. All this power, and they're not here. Why? The curator's voice filled the chamber again. The next trial begins now. Show me what you see. The crystalline structure's facets blazed with light, projecting a series of challenges into the space around them. The alien probes immediately began analyzing the projections, breaking them down into mathematical components, looking for patterns and solutions. But Sarah and her team saw something different. Each projection told a story of choices made, of power used or restrained, of wisdom gained through failure rather than success. It's not about solving the problems, Sarah explained to her team. It's about understanding why they exist in the first place. While the alien observers deployed increasingly sophisticated analysis tools, the human team took a different approach. They looked for connections, for meaning beyond the surface patterns. They debated, questioned, and most importantly, wondered. Your methods are inefficient, the musical voice noted with disapproval. You waste time on speculation when direct analysis would miss the point entirely. Dr. Tanaka interrupted. Look at your own data. How many of these sites has your species truly understood? Not just accessed, but understood. The silence from above was telling. As they worked, Sarah noticed something remarkable. The more they approached the challenges as puzzles to be understood rather than problems to be solved, the more the chamber seemed to respond. The light patterns in the walls shifted, becoming more complex, but also more meaningful. They're not just tests, she announced suddenly. They're conversations. The precursors didn't want to find species worthy of their power. They wanted to find species wise enough to use it differently than they did. The crystalline structure pulsed with brilliant light, and new images appeared within it. They showed the precursors' final days, not a catastrophic end, but a deliberate choice, a civilization at its peak, choosing to step aside, to make room for new growth, new perspectives. They couldn't evolve anymore, Sarah whispered. They'd become too perfect, too set in their ways. They needed new eyes, new minds, new ways of seeing. The alien observers fell silent as the implications of her words sank in. Their advanced technology, their rigid protocols, their certainty in their own superiority. All of it might have been leading them away from true understanding rather than toward it. The curator's voice held unmistakable warmth as it spoke again. You begin to see, but seeing is only the first step. The true trial still awaits. The crystalline structure's light intensified, and the chamber began to transform around them. The true test was about to begin, and humanity's greatest strength, its ability to adapt, to think differently, to learn from its own imperfection, would be put to the ultimate test. Above them, the alien ship's perfect machines waited, their certainty perhaps a little less certain than before. The price of knowledge. The chamber's transformation was breathtaking. The walls of living light coalesced into what appeared to be a vast neural network, pulsing with information flows that spanned galaxies. Within these streams, Sarah could glimpse fragments of civilizations long gone, echoes of choices made and paths not taken. Your understanding grows, the curator observed. Now see what the others could not. The crystalline structure at the chamber's center fractured into thousands of smaller shards, each containing a piece of the precursor's final message. But instead of arranging themselves in a logical pattern, the fragments scattered chaotically throughout the space. The alien probes immediately moved to collect and analyze the shards, their advanced sensors cataloging each piece with perfect precision. But something was wrong. The fragments are changing, Dr. Tanaka reported, watching their readings. Every time they're scanned, the information inside shifts. Impossible, the metallic voice declared from above. Our quantum analysis systems are infallible. Sarah watched the floating shards carefully. They're not changing randomly, she realized. They're responding to intention. The harder you try to analyze them, the more they resist. Commander Rodriguez nodded slowly. Like trying to grab water. The tighter you squeeze, the more slips through your fingers. Sarah finished. The precursors didn't just leave information. They left a choice. The alien observers grew agitated. Their probes scanning patterns became increasingly aggressive, trying to force the fragments to yield their secrets. But with each attempt, the shards seemed to become more chaotic, more resistant to analysis. You've found these sites before, Sarah called to the aliens above. But you've never truly accessed them, have you? Because you're trying to take the knowledge rather than understand why it was left. Silence, the deep voice commanded. You cannot comprehend the importance of this data. The precursor's technology could revolutionize entire civilizations. And that's exactly why they didn't just leave it lying around, Dr. Tanaka countered. They buried it in ice, protected it with tests that can't be solved by force or technology alone. The chamber's neural network pulsed faster, and new images appeared in the flowing data streams. They showed civilizations rising and falling, species reaching for power they weren't ready to wield, entire galaxies transformed by technology that outpaced wisdom. The precursors weren't just advanced, Sarah said softly. They were survivors. They saw where unbridled technological progress led. They understood the price of knowledge without understanding. The crystalline fragments began to pulse in rhythm with her words. The alien probe scanners went haywire, their perfect protocols unable to process what was happening. This is your final warning, the metallic voice announced. Step aside. Your primitive understanding cannot possibly. Look, Lieutenant Santos interrupted, pointing to the neural network. The data streams had changed, now showing Earth's history, but not the history of human technological achievement. Instead, it showed moments of learning, of growth through failure, of wisdom gained through struggle. They're not testing our capabilities, Commander Rodriguez realized. They're testing our capacity to learn from our mistakes. The chamber hummed with energy as the fragments began to move again. But this time, they weren't chaotic. They were forming patterns, not the rigid, perfect patterns the alien probe sought, but flowing, organic arrangements that seemed to follow the rhythm of thought itself. Your species still wars among itself, the musical voice noted. You poison your own world. You let emotion cloud judgment. These are not traits worthy of the precursor's legacy. No, Sarah agreed. They're traits that show we're still growing, still learning, still capable of change. She turned to face the alien ships above. When was the last time your civilizations truly changed? Not just advanced, but fundamentally reconsidered your path. The silence was telling. The curator's voice filled the chamber again. The final trial approaches. But be warned, what you learn here cannot be unlearned. The price of knowledge is understanding, and understanding brings responsibility. The neural network's pulse quickened, and the fragment patterns began to spiral inward, forming the new configuration around the human team. The alien probes tried to intervene, their sensors straining to capture what was happening. "Stop them," the deep voice commanded. "They cannot be allowed to." But it was too late. The fragments had aligned, and in their pattern, a truth began to emerge, one that would change humanity's understanding of not just the precursors, but of life itself. The price of knowledge was about to be paid, and the universe held its breath. Legacy of stars. The truth revealed by the crystalline fragments was both beautiful and terrible. Within the spiral pattern they'd formed, Sarah and her team saw the complete history of the precursors, not just their achievements, but their failures, their doubts, their evolution. "They didn't vanish," Sarah whispered. "They transformed." The neural network around them blazed with confirmation, showing the precursors' final days, not as a tragedy or a triumph, but as a metamorphosis. The most advanced civilization in known space had discovered something beyond technology, beyond power. They had discovered transcendence. "Impossible," the metallic voice declared, but there was uncertainty in its tone now. The precursors were beings of pure logic, of absolute technological mastery. "No," Dr. Tanaka countered, reading the data streams. "They were explorers, like us, and their greatest discovery was that technology alone wasn't enough." The curator's voice resonated through the chamber. "You see truly. The precursors reached the limits of physical evolution. They could reshape planets, harness the power of stars, bend space and time to their will. But they could not overcome their own nature." The fragments shifted again, showing the moment of choice. The precursors, at the height of their power, realizing that their perfect technology had become a cage. They had solved every problem, answered every question, mastered every physical law. And in doing so, they had stopped growing. So they didn't leave their technology for us to find. Commander Rodriguez understood. They'd left their wisdom. The legacy is not power, the curator confirmed. It is purpose. Above them, the alien ship's probes began to malfunction. Their rigid protocols couldn't process this revelation. All their advanced technology, their centuries of progress, had been leading them down the same path the precursors had abandoned. "Your species still stumbles," the deep voice rumbled. "You fight, you fail, you fall. How can such imperfection be worthy?" Sarah stepped into the center of the fragment spiral. "Because we're still alive, still changing, still learning." She gestured to the neural network. "Look at your own histories. When was the last time your civilizations faced a true challenge? When did you last have to adapt, to think differently, to grow?" The chamber filled with new images, the alien civilization's histories of perfect, steady progress. No failures, no setbacks, no evolution. Just the relentless march of technological advancement. "The precursors didn't want inheritors," Sarah continued. "They wanted successors. Not species to receive their power, but species to learn from their journey." The crystalline fragments began to pulse with increasing intensity. From within their depths, a new kind of energy emerged. Not the raw power the aliens had sought, but something more fundamental. The capacity for change itself. "This is your moment of choice," the curator announced. "The legacy is not given. It is grown." Suddenly, the alien probes surged forward, their sensors at maximum power. "We will not be denied," the metallic voice declared. "If you will not give us the precursor's power, we will take it." But as the probes reached for the fragments, something remarkable happened. The crystal shards didn't resist. They didn't fight back. They simply changed. Each attempt to grasp them led to new patterns, new configurations, new truths that couldn't be captured, only understood. "You still don't see," Lieutenant Santos said softly. The power was never in the technology. It was in the journey. The neural network erupted with light, and the chamber began to transform one final time. The precursor's last message played out before them, not in words or data, but in pure understanding. They had seeded the galaxy with these sights not to find worthy inheritors of their power, but to ensure that no species would repeat their mistake. The mistake of perfection. "Human." The curator addressed Sarah directly. "Your species has far to go. You will stumble. You will fail. You will face challenges that seem insurmountable. But in those struggles lies your greatest strength, the ability to change, to adapt, to evolve." The crystalline fragments suddenly aligned into a perfect sphere, their combined light filling the chamber with impossible colors. Within that light, Sarah could see possibilities, not just for humanity, but for all species who were still growing, still learning, still alive with the potential for change. "The legacy is yours," the curator declared, "not because you are worthy, but because you are unfinished." The precursor's final gift is not their knowledge, but their understanding that knowledge without growth is a dead end. Above them, the alien ships began to withdraw, their perfect machines finally confronting a truth they couldn't categorize or control. The legacy they had sought for centuries had been within them all along. They had simply stopped reaching for it. As the chamber began to stabilize, its energies settling into new patterns, Sarah understood the true meaning of the precursor's tests. They hadn't been looking for species advanced enough to inherit their power. They had been looking for species humble enough to choose a different path. "We accept your legacy," Commander Rodriguez declared formally. Not as an end, but as a beginning. The curator's presence began to fade, but its final words echoed through more than just the chamber. They echoed through time itself, a message left by the most advanced civilization in history to those who would come after. The greatest power is not mastery over the universe, but mastery over oneself. The greatest wisdom is knowing that wisdom is never complete. The greatest legacy is not what you leave behind, but what you inspire others to become. As the human team prepared to return to their ship, Sarah took one last look at the crystalline sphere. Within its depths, she could see humanity's potential future, not a destiny of perfect technology or absolute power, but something far more precious. The freedom to choose their own path, the strength to learn from their mistakes, the wisdom to know that the journey itself was the greatest gift of all. The legacy of the precursors wasn't their technology. It was their final choice to step aside, to make room for new stories, new struggles, new growth. And humanity, with all its flaws and failures, its dreams and determination, was ready to begin.